Hi everyone, it's Dianna Shyne from Acrylic University. Welcome to our next workshop on fields and farms, a series of a bunch of them on one Friday morning a month, and this month is fields and farms. And today we're going to be looking at how you can create a more realistic look in your farms and your farm rows. We're going to use that idea of farms to look at some tools that you can use for just about everything that you're painting, because we're going to talk about, okay, drum roll, the dreaded word perspective. And I want to present it in a way that makes it a puzzle that we work out, a visual puzzle, not a math problem, although everything could be turned into a math problem. It isn't. It's the way we see out of our eyes every minute of every day. And we're going to talk about that and talk about how we can translate what we're seeing and what we think we're seeing and connect those two. Perspective is also a great way to connect yourself up with the landscape in a more interesting way, and to engage your viewers and show them exactly what you see out of your eyes when you're standing out there in the landscape looking. What do you see? Isn't that the artist's job, is to show people what your vision is? So we're going to talk about those things and how you can use the idea of perspective to draw your viewers in and to express what it is that you are seeing. The poetry that's in your mind can be expressed through this tool. And like any tool in painting, it's just something in your toolbox that you can use when you need, and don't use if you don't want to. You can practice it for years before you finally start using it, or never use it at all. But if you already know a lot about this subject, just consider it review, and we're going to get going. So I'm going to start our slideshow, and we're going to talk about how we can create better fields and farms. Now, I lived for years near the Skagit Valley, and every spring we have these incredible rows of tulips and daffodils ending at the foothills of the mountains. So incredibly beautiful and amazing. And my journeys have taken me to Tuscany, where I see these rolling hills with the fields that flow up the sides of mountains. Farms are a great way to look at the sky as well, because the farmlands stretch out before us in a beautiful flat way. And don't you just love what happens to muddy tractor treads in the sunset? Everything about farms is beautiful. It's man and nature working together to solve problems, to create abundance for humans, and to work with nature. Here's some paintings by our own Jed Dorsey of fields and farms. This is a Russian impressionist. It's like Levitan, and such a subtle, calm, quiet way to take us down a road through fields. Here's mine, less calm, less subtle, but a way to find our way through these this imagery. Here's Al Currier, who paints these Skagit tulips in such a remarkable and lively way. And Vincent, we love Vincent, but take a look at, there's some really basic things we need to know about perspective that connects all those artists. And the main thing is that when you have two objects the same size on the same level on your page or on your paper or in your vision, in your view, you consider them to be the same distance from you. When one of those objects is smaller and higher up on the page, you instantly know it's farther away. And so we judge distance every minute of every day. When we look at the pumpkin photo on the right, we can almost tell how many steps it's going to get from the pumpkin in the front to the pumpkin in the middle to the pumpkins in the back. We have an automatic gauge inside of us that helps us to judge distances by the size of things. Here I am in a museum, and you don't know I'm in the museum because I'm the one with the camera. But when we're anywhere out in the world, when things that we know what size they should be are bigger, we know they're closer to us. And when they're smaller, we know that they're farther away. And how this works, translating that three-dimensional working of the real world in our eyes, is this. If we can find a straight line of architecture and another straight line of architecture, or any straight lines at all in the environment, where those two lines meet, where they hook up, and I'm going to put my cursor right there, where those lines meet, that is eye level. This whole band, red band across here, is now eye level. Not just any eye level, my eye level. I'm the one holding the camera. And right here, right where these pieces of straight lines converge, that's called the vanishing point. And what happens is, if you were to be standing behind me, you would see my camera lens right here. That's where I am connecting with the environment around me. If I was taller, this eye level would be higher, and these bands, all these shapes in this building would be different because I'm taller. If I was laying on my stomach on the floor, this eye level would be way down here, and everything I was looking at would be completely different, would look different to your eye. The only reason it looks the way it does is because I'm the height I am standing where I was with my camera. Every single line, if this building is straight and level and true, every single line that should be parallel, even the cracks in the tiles, will end up at my vanishing point. This is personal to me, your vanishing point. What if I was standing over here? Everything in this room, everything in this picture would look different because my point of view would be in a different spot. So let's take a look a little bit more closely at these concepts. Here I am standing in the middle of a railroad track. Smart girl. And taking this picture. It's a busy railroad track. I better be careful. So we know railroad tracks have to be the same width apart. If we're looking straight down on them from a tree, we would see they were exactly the same width apart, or the train would derail. But if I run a line down these railroad tracks, we see that that line converges or crisscrosses. Where that crisscrosses, that is my eye level. That, if I were to be standing there and had a laser level out of my eyeball, my eye in this image would connect with the landscape. The parallel lines of the track converge at eye level, and that spot where they crisscross is called the vanishing point. So here I am standing in the middle of this dirt road. That's me, maybe a ghost of me. Maybe it's just the thought of me, younger and thinner too. But where my eyes are, level with my eyes, that is considered eye level. I'm going to go over and over this because some people get that mixed up with something people call horizon, and they get that mixed up with the top of the mountains. No, eye level is level with your eyes, where you are standing in this moment. There's a bunch of other things we have to consider, but we'll do that on another day. But now all the lines of the road and the environment where they mowed it converge right at eye level, right in front of my eyes. If I'm further down the road, it doesn't matter. Those same lines are going to converge right in my eye level at the vanishing point. If I'm standing over here, I'm going to be seeing something completely different. I won't be looking down the road anymore. I'll be looking across it. We'll look at some things and talk about that. This is called one-point perspective. That means everything that you're seeing in this environment converges in one point at eye level. The tops of those lamps, the railroad tracks, the tops of the building, the edge of the sidewalk, everything is converging at eye level. That's the vanishing point. There I am, standing once again in the middle of a busy train track. Oh no, the train's coming and I moved over. But take a look at what happened. All those lines converge at from my new vantage point, from my new eye level, I'm standing up on the sidewalk a little bit and I'm looking straight out at something new, but all the lines are still converging at my new eye level. And here I walk to the end of the platform, and once again, everything is converging. All the lines, every single line we're seeing in even the line of the tops of the trees, even though this tree is a taller tree, the basic general growth of the trees still falls into that general idea of converging at eye level. So here we are. Now we're getting to the fields. We're going to get into these fields now that we have sort of this basic idea of what I'm talking about with eye level. This is this beautiful tulip bloom in the Skagit Valley. And here I'm going to just run some lines out along the edges of the tulip growth. And even though tulips are somewhat irregular, they've been planted along straight lines. But here off to the left and off to the right, we're not really seeing those lines anymore. We're looking, that's sort of in our peripheral vision, we're looking sideways, and the tulips are tall and they're overlapping each other. So we can't see the lines. We can't see the perspective lines in these bits off here to the side, wherever all the growth of the plants have overlapped our ability to see the dirt and stems, the lines of perspective. Where I can see all the way to the edge, all the way to the top, is right up the middle of my line of vision. I can't see dirt and water puddles in any of the other rows. So this is kind of the block-in if you were going to do, stand in the middle of a row of flowers or corn or wheat or anything. This is sort of the block-in of what you would expect to see. Here's how some of my students will often bring me a painting and go, what's wrong with this painting? They are interpreting the flower fields in a really abstract way. They know there's green stems and red flowers. They get bigger in the front and smaller in the back. All of those premises, all those ideas are good ideas, but let's take away the sky for a minute and look. No vanishing point. That's why it looks funny, because none of these lines really end up together in a vanishing point. So if we reconstruct them, making things, remember, bigger things are considered closer to us, smaller things get smaller as they go back in space, and then these side pieces, all that stuff starts overlapping. Let's take a look now. Oh, even though it's really rough and abstract, they're all ending at a vanishing point. The fields lay flatter and they look a little bit better. Here's a problem that many of us have, is not all fields are created the same. They don't plant them all going the same direction. So these are some blueberry bushes in winter. And here I've just drawn the straight edges so we know where eye level is. There's eye level right there. I'm standing on a little hill, or actually you can see way down here in the lower left, that's my mirror on my car. I'm in my car taking the picture. Someone's driving. I said, pull over, stop. I want these. So they pulled over. I took this picture. I was up a little higher, so you can see my eye level is a little higher than in some of the other places. But uh-oh, what's going on with this batch of blueberries off to the left? Let's take a look. Oh dear, they're connecting with my eye level. So because they're turned, they're not going, the rows aren't going the same direction as these rows, they're turned. There's going to be a second vanishing point where I'm sort of looking across these plantings. And if I were to find the vanishing point of this river, there would be a third one, but they would all end up right along my eye level. So here's, I'm just going to take a little segue for a minute. This is a little thing I used to do in my math class in about 6th grade. I used to draw a square on my peachy. Did any of you have peachies? And then another square. And then I'd hook up the corners. And that created the optical illusion of a 3-dimensional box. And then I could scribble in a side and make it look like a 3D box. I did this over and over and over. It was such a fun optical illusion. Well, let's put that optical illusion, connect it up with an eye level and a vanishing point, and let's see what happens. I'm picking a random vanishing point, just because this is how I would have done it when I was in junior high. And I'm going to draw the edges of the box now. Now how about I do another one, a bigger box, closer. It's going to look like the box is closer because it's bigger and lower down on the page. Now let me erase all those guidelines. There we go. Oh no, it just disappeared. Well, what we had was some boxes in 3D. I don't know if I can get them back, but look what is, the reason I did those is that these tulips, any crop we're looking at, anything, is not just a flat plane of red flowers and a flat plane of green stuff or a flat plane. It's a 3-dimensional thing. It's a box with some lines that vanish at a vanishing point. Here we go. Take a look at these boxes now. 3-dimensional. So when we're looking at a field of anything, we're not just seeing it as flat, we need to represent it as 3-dimensional, because that's what we're doing. We're taking a 3-dimensional scene and interpreting it onto a flat piece of canvas so that we create the optical illusion of 3 dimensions. So here I am, someone's driving, I'm taking the picture out of a zooming car window, yelling stop, but they can't stop because there's a car behind us. But what I want you to see in this blurry image is that, down here at the bottom, I've just drawn a little line for the bottom of the gully. We're going up the side of the mown, I think this, I'm not sure what this is, mowed hay or something, or I'm not sure what crop this is. Across the top, down the other side, across the bottom of the little channel, up the side, across the top, down. Over here, we're going up that angled side, across the top. There's the bottom of the row again. You can see we're looking at something 3-dimensional. We can see the lit where the sunlight is hitting over here on this side, and we can see where the sides of these rows are in shadow off to the right. And when we're just aware of what's going on, we can more accurately depict this scene. So just thinking about these now in 3 dimensions, remembering how the crops, whether they're corn or tulips or daffodils or cabbages, are going to overlap each other off to the sides of our vision where we cannot see the rose. We're going to see the rose most clearly directly in front of us. And they get more and more and more overlapped as we go back in space. Plus, the rows get visually smaller and smaller and smaller as they go back away from us in space, sideways. We can see how this crop changed when I changed the height, when I changed my eye level, when I got up on a high hill and looked down on it. All of the things I'm looking at changed. And so when we're thinking about creating a painting, no matter what it is we're thinking about, if you are in charge of your reference material, which I suggest at some point you do, because then it's your idea, it emerges from you. And it's fun to go out in nature and take pictures. But you might want to just change your angle. Step to one side. In this image, I'm right in front of the dirt path, and these lines lead so fast, take your eye so quickly up to this spot that you almost don't have time to look at anything else. But when I just step off to the side, everything slows down a little bit and I have a more interesting angle. Plus, if we look carefully, the edge of these plants create another idea of perspective right through there. And it makes it a little more interesting. Okay, this is a little video I took. This is a piece of panel, a painting panel, and I did about 1.5 inch sections with a dry erase marker on it. And I want you to see what happens when we lift that panel up, when we change our point of view. You can see that the rows in the front definitely are bigger than the rows in the back. And so when we look straight down on it, they're just straight and even, just like railroad tracks. And when we change the perspective, we see how we change our point of view. We see how they are bigger in the front and the back. When I turn it sideways, we can see that the bands, if we were looking across the field instead of down the rows, we could see that the bands become bigger the closer they are to us and smaller the farther away they get. So let's take a look at, I have this little house. I love this house. I used to drive by this house. I live in Portland now. I don't live near it, but I used to drive by this house all the time. And let's take a look at what happens when we're looking across the bands. In this first picture on the top, we can see that the bands are bigger, getting smaller and smaller as they go back in space, but the overall look at them drives our eye off the page. In this one on the bottom left, we can see that the bands are wide and get smaller and smaller and smaller as they go back in space, but the overall perspective of these bands takes me to a point in the image that isn't very interesting. In the lower right, these bands take me, fast right to this little house. It's a big house. Here, I took a picture at another part of the year when this field had overgrown, we can still see a ghost of these bands of perspective, but now they're driving us up to this fence, and our eye can come and enjoy a little journey through the painting. It's not quite as fast. Here we have looking across. Instead of looking straight down the road or straight down the row of tulips, I'm looking across. And again, we can see they're wider and then it gets smaller as we go back. But over here is what I'm looking at. That area on the photograph becomes a point where my eye is being driven off the side of the page, and I can't really stay engaged in the photo, or if I were painting this in the painting, because my eye is right off the edge of the page. Here's another one where I'm looking across the bands, and because I've cropped it in a different way, it's more interesting, except, and look, here's bigger, smaller, smaller. But what's right in my focal point is a whole bunch of Sani cans. Probably I'm going to walk around the tulip field and look for a different angle. Here we go, looking straight across at an interesting grouping of barns with these couple of ladies in the foreground. That might be an interesting, more interesting. And if we really take a look, some of the bands are planted thinner than others, yes. But if we were to rearrange them, and here we can see the stems of the whites, but if we were to rearrange these so that everything was bigger, less big, you can see a little less big, a little less big. This is a wider band, but what if we just made them all a little bit less big? It'd almost be like stair steps, taking us back, back, back to the interesting barns. I might modify them a little bit, make this one big long one less long. That would be easy to do. But there at least is not Sani cans in the back. It's an interesting focal point. I have one more thing to say about one-point perspective. You can use it for so many things. And, oh, here, I just hopped a rabbit onto the railroad tracks. And we can see he kind of looks the right rabbit size. But what happens now is that rabbit looks gigantic, as big as a moose, because these lines of perspective have created the optical illusion of distance. We see that rabbit as way too big. But take a look. He's exactly the same size as the rabbit in the foreground. Exactly the same size. We see him as huge because he's in context with all of these other elements that are creating an optical illusion of distance. So we have to shrink him down. And how we do that, how we can find the exact right size, is if you're good at eyeballing, you can eyeball it, or you can put up your eye level, run a perspective line across the tail and the nose of the top bunny, and then you can stick the tail and the nose of the bunny in the back between those lines of perspective. And he's exactly the right size. He looks correct for this scene, except that he's all white and doesn't have any shadows, but that's another thing for another day. So here's a field of cows. And when we're thinking about why perspective works, we understand that things that are closer to us are larger than like-sized things that are further away. Those things are a lot smaller. So finding out how small, let's say I wanted to put more cows in this picture, but I don't know how big to make them. I'm going to do something. I'm going to find a perspective line from the nose and the backbone of this laying down cow to this cow. And I want to put another cow back here. but I don't know how big to make it. So let's put a perspective line between nose and bums in the cows right here. I'm going to draw a little picture of this cow. I'm going to stick him between the perspective lines. And when I take those lines away, he looks exactly right. He looks exactly the right size for this image. You could even take a cow out of here, extract it, and make it bigger. Make it exactly the right size. Perspective can be used for so many things because it is the way we see out of our eyes every minute of every day. If you have questions about it, you can review this because it will all be recorded. Or if you have any questions right now, you can ask Peter before I go on to barns, putting a barn in perspective. So ask away. Peter, if you're there, you can go ahead if anyone's asking questions, if I'm going too fast. Otherwise, we'll get into that. But I want you to see that even clouds line up in our vision. The clouds that are closer to us look bigger. And as they stretch downward across the dome of the sky to my eye level, they get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller as they get further away from me. There are some things we haven't discussed here, which is lines that go uphill. What do we do about that? What do we do about ones that twist and turn and curve in space? Well, I haven't approached that because it's going to take a whole course. And if you would like me to show you a course on how to do this and how to make it look right, I will create a course for that for Acrylic University. I'd be happy to. But right now, we don't have enough time. We're moving on to barns and buildings. And as I was looking at barns and buildings in fields and farms, I realized how many different kinds of architecture there was. You don't need to memorize this, you don't need to know it. Just being aware of how many different types will help us get a handle on how to draw it and recreate it for our paintings. We love, I don't know about you, I love barns and buildings. These ones, these three, all of these three barns are over 200 years old. We love the history of barns. We love the use of barns, the shape of barns. How beautiful they are. A red barn against a green field, or a architectural piece against all that nature. The idea of man and nature working hand in hand is sort of shown in the architecture of barns, and they're beautiful. And some artists recreate them in such a beautiful and splendid way. This is a work of a friend of mine, Ramona Youngquist. So remember our 2 blocks that I zoomed away from so fast? They were below eye level. These 2 blocks are communicating with each other and with the viewer. They're telling us a lot. They're telling us, even if we don't know, they're telling us where the viewer is standing, where the viewer's eyes are, how far below the viewer they are. They could be buildings or they could be children's blocks. It doesn't matter. They're organized on a flat plane and they are facing each other in a certain way. So let's take a look at a house, a building that is below eye level. That means we're standing on a hill looking down on it. So I'm going to show you how to find eye level. I just took a little line. Here's my cursor right by this upper window in the little house by the river. And I sent it out into space. And I took another little line and I sent it out into space. Remember where those 2 lines connect? That's eye level. Look at how high my eye level is on this little building. Every line on the side of this building, every architectural line, the top of the doors, connecting the 2 eaves on the roof, The bottoms and tops of windows, they all connect up to that one dot at eye level. Everything on this side of the building, and not this side of the building. Where the building turns, here's the turning spot right here. The building turns. Everything on this turned side, the side that's turning away from us, is ending at the vanishing point on eye level. This is my student's painting, and she gave me permission to use it, and we had a jolly laugh because she knows all about perspective, but in this painting she just forgot to employ it. All of these lines bend at an angle like they're supposed to, but they are equal distance. They do not end up at eye level. They just keep going out into eternity. That's what made this little house look tweaked, looked like it wasn't correct, because these lines of the top of the door, the line that connects eave to eave, the top of the window, the bottom of the window, they don't connect with the vanishing point. Here's me. Here's my eyes. Here's me standing on that hill looking down at the little house. So let's take a look. I've got another little little thing I recorded using some kids' blocks, and I'm going to sort of speed you through them. This is just a rectangular cube and a little flat piece of a block, and you can see what happens when I turn the cube. The long side looks shorter, and as I turn it out again, you can see it all depends on my angle, how I'm standing. Now the short side looks like a little sliver, and now it disappears. It all depends on the angle that I'm standing at, how big that side of the building is, and how we find that in our paintings is we're going to look for this turning point, the point where the building turns from one side to the other. And we know that things closest to us are bigger than things further away. We just figured that out. But how do we determine how to create that side of the building? So I'm going to try to put a little roof on this building, and we're going to figure this out. So when I turn the building, the roof and everything changes shape, changes width, and even the roof, that triangle changes from a triangle to a warped triangle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an X from one corner of the side of my block to the other, and I'm going to put a line straight up the middle of that X to the top of the roof peak of my little house. There we go. And now, when I turn this, when I take this together as a little house and turn it, you can see that I know exactly where the center line of the roof goes. I know exactly what point of this ever-changing side of my building is the middle. This side is closer to me and is bigger. This side is further away from me, is smaller, and I'm going to show you how to draw this in just a second. First, I've put my eye level up where I want my eye level in my drawing. And I've also made a little line for the main angle of the house as it goes away from me. And I laid a ruler down because this house is sitting at a little bit of an angle. So I want to get these two angles that the house is sitting at. So I'm going to move my ruler down to make sure I have that angle right. And I'm going to move just, if you have a piece of string or you have a little ruler, you can put these down. Now I'm going to draw my line and make sure that that line is connecting to my eye level. Make sure that the angle, now the box that isn't going away in perspective, I drew that. Now before I get to the roof line, I'm going to draw where the eaves are going to go. And The side of the house ends right at this line of perspective where this main box of the house ends. Now, before I put anything else on, guess what I'm going to do? Remember my X in the little video? I'm going to put an X on that. And I drew a line straight through the middle of the X. Now, I'm noticing that my roof is about twice, it's sort of almost twice as high as the side of the building. I can measure it all out if I want to be more specific, but I just eyeballed it as about twice as high. So I made this line about twice as high as this side of the building. Now all I have to do is connect the sides to the top. Oh look, now I have that whole side of the building and it doesn't look distorted. Now to get the other side of the roof, I'm just going to move the angle over and put the top of the roof across. Now I have this building drawn and the whole side of the building does not look distorted or like a little kid drew it. And when I want to put the windows in, I'm going to take the lines from my, over here, way, way, way outside of my page. There's my vanishing point. I'm going to connect up some lines and I can draw the windows in with that right angle at the top of the windows. I can draw the doors and windows in with the correct angle at the top of the doors and windows. I can put in all the details, but I know the main structure of the building is correct. So this X, along with a eye level and a vanishing point, are going to really help you find how to put your building, how to make your farm building look correct. Here's a beautiful old 250-year-old barn on Prince Edward Island, a little bit below eye level. And if you were to have this barn in your collection of things to paint in your reference photos, now you would have a clue how you were going to figure out the angles on the roof of the barn, the side here. How are you going to figure out the angle of this little roof and that one, and how they all connect with the eye of the viewer? The viewer would understand. They're standing on a little hill looking down on this beautiful old piece of architecture. Uh-oh. So what happens if something is above eye level? So I built this really scabby little hillside and I made eye level. I'm standing down looking up a hill and I'm going to hook some lines up to a vanishing point. This will become clear in a minute. It looks really silly right now. Let's put another one in. Let's put another block in and hook some lines up to a vanishing point. Now let's erase our drawing lines. And I put in a little piece of land that this other house. Now I have a house that's sitting on a hill. We're looking up at it. And I have a cube that's floating in space. Okay, round off the edges. It's a cloud. You've got a cloud, a very square cloud. But it's these, you can see how perspective gives us the viewpoint of looking up at a building instead of down. Here's that same student, and she sent me this painting as well. And we can see to boathouse, again, that side of the building looks a little off. It looks skewed. When we see it, we think, something's wrong. And if you don't have perspective in your awareness, you might not know what's wrong. That's why she sent it to me for critique, was because she thought there was something wrong with this boathouse, but didn't know quite what. And what we see is that this structure is mainly above our eye level. We're standing on the beach looking up at this structure for the most part. Eye level hits right here, and I'm going to show you how to find eye level in just a second, so don't worry, on something that isn't online. But now I'm running a line between, just down the edge of the siding, and where it intersects with eye level, that's my vanishing point. Now I'm looking at some other siding, and look at all, the bottom of the window and the bottom of the boathouse, they all connect with my vanishing point. But over here, I've made a little green line. We're going to see that all the lines on that side of her boathouse are all horizontal, where they should be going this direction. They should all be slanting this way. If they were, this boathouse would look a lot more proportionate and correct. If she were to use my X formula to find the center of her boathouse roof, we would find that her roof looked more correct. So when we're dealing with a building in one point perspective, that's easy to find. Now this old barn is another 200. I love these old barns. This one is again on Prince Edward Island. They're so well loved and cared for, 200 years old. I'm going to take this ruler, and here is how, if you've got a reference photo, this is one way for you to figure out where your eye level is on this thing. How do I figure this out? I'm going to take the ruler up to the edge here, and I can see that all the siding is like intersecting with the ruler, and the edge of the roof is intersecting with the ruler. They're at angles to the ruler. Now I'm going to slowly draw the ruler down the side of the siding until it all levels out, till it doesn't intersect. Now this building is 200 years old, and I think it's drooping slightly in the back. I think settling happens. But for the most part, this is where I would feel eye level is. I'm standing down, just slightly down a light slope from this barn. And my eye level is here. So let's make it smaller, because we're going to find two vanishing points. Because I'm looking at it and both sides of the building are going away at an angle, I have something called two-point perspective. Oh no. What does that mean? It just means there's 2 points where things vanish to. So all I have to do is draw a straight line from the edge of my eave down to my eye level, vanishing point, and all the other angles on the side of the building should connect up. So I've done the same thing over here, drawing a straight line from the roof going the other direction, and the eave line and the side of the siding and the bottom of the window and the bottom of the eaves all connect up with a vanishing point on the other side. In order for me to build this building, or to draw this building, I just need to find the angles of all those things, and the building will look like it's going away in space, just exactly right. And I can find the tops of the windows this way. I can find the bottoms of the windows, even the little framework inside the windows. I can find all of it by just taking a line and connecting it to my vanishing point. Here's the, we're going to use this in just a few minutes, and we're going to figure out how to do this in a different way, not using rulers, how to do it in a more, in an easier way. And I'm also going to show you how I do it when I'm outside in plein air and I don't have rulers and lines and a flat surface to work on. We're going to do that. But right now I want to show you something really quickly before we begin our demo. This is a painting by Sergei Bongard. And a lot of students say, well, you know, this is their thought to me is, well, I don't really want to learn perspective because I want to paint loose. But I want to show you something. Sergei Bongard is a very loose painter. I'm following some lines of perspective. Here's his eye level. You can see this building is perfectly in perspective. All of the architectural lines go to a vanishing point. even though it's painted loosely, he has the bones of this painting accurately placed in perspective. Here's a painting by William Hooke, and you can see all the major bones of his painting hook up with a vanishing point in perspective. This old barn, this old rickety barn, I sent this line of perspective up to find the line of all these open boards inside the building. You can see even a rickety old barn like this. Here's a similar barn done by Michelle Usabelli, and yes, it is loose, but it is also the part of the barn that's turning away from the viewer is in perspective. And another Sergei Bongart painting, loose, 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 and yet all of the lines vanish. He's got his vanishing point and perspective. So being a loose painter doesn't mean that you have to let go of the ideas of, this is just the framework of how you would create a 3D look on a two-dimensional piece of paper. It's a way that you can find your way to do it. If you're really good at eyeballing things, you can do that. But now we're going to take a look at both my reference photo, and we're going to take a look at how we can do some easy way to get perspective into your hands as a tool. Once again, you don't have to use this if you don't want to. It's a tool. And if you use it as a puzzle, as a way to solve a visual puzzle, you'll have a lot more fun with it. So let's get started. I'm going to get back here. Hang on. There we are. I hope you can see me now. But we're going to get started working on a drawing on my drawing board. I've got some things set up for you so we can take a look at how we can more easily do this. And let me get over there.
Hey, Diana.
And I'm going to get
just real quick, we have a
started.
question
Yeah?
from somebody before we hop on to the next thing. It says,
Yes.
can you do, or Susie Crawford asks, can you do the same perspective lines with still life?
Yes, absolutely. Everything we see, here, let me get back to me.
Yeah.
Everything we see, everything we look at from our eyes is in perspective. Absolutely everything. Take a look at the room you're in. At the corner of the room, that's in perspective. The angles aren't, the angles that your architect built are square in reality. Here we go, I made a square. But when you're looking at them, they're tweaked because they're in perspective. If you're looking at a picture on the wall, it's bigger, closer to you, and smaller. If I'm doing a couple of cups, here we go. The one closer to me is bigger, and the one farther away is smaller. It all works that way. And when I was doing still lifes a lot, big still lifes, one of the things I would do would be to get a big piece of drawing paper and kind of map it out on the floor, because when you're dealing with a table, the ends of perspective might be a long way off outside of your picture. So yes, it can be done with figures. In fact, the best figure drawers and painters have an idea of how to put the planes of the face in perspective. The face is a three-dimensional object, and so many of us try to paint it like it's a pie plate with features glued on, but it's actually a lot of things in perspective. So once you get a handle on the idea of it, everything can be done this way. Absolutely everything. Cityscapes, interior scenes, Jed's wonderful back alleys. If you were to look at his paintings, and I suggest you do, because his perspective is perfect, and I bet he just eyeballs it. I'm so jealous. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he does measure it out. But I'll tell you, when things are correct, even if the rest of the painting is very loose and the edge of something is only suggested, it really looks right to the viewer. It looks like, oh, this is how I see. If your intent as a painter is to not make it look like the way people see, but to torque reality, then don't use it. Don't use the tool if you don't want it, okay? So anyway, answer to question, well answered, done and answered. I'm going over to my drawing table now. And Peter and I were all over this. It's a really cloudy day, and I have this room that I'm using is full of windows, and I've got bright lights, but it's still a little dull here, so I'm sorry about that. But I have a piece of foam core. I got this at the dollar store, and what I have is a piece of just twine taped to the foam core. Uh-oh. It's my other piece of twine missing. The whole purpose of this was that I had another piece of twine. Oh, here it is. Oh, thank goodness. And I have another piece of twine with a knot tied in it, or you could put a piece of tape on and push a pin through. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with a building. Here's our building that we're working with today. And I did a little bit, I printed a little bit of a close-up of that building. And I am going to just push it under the string. Let me move all these other things out of the way so they're not visually disturbing. I'm going to push it under the string until all the lines of this, I love this little shingles on the side of this building, until all the lines of the shingles are level or even with the string. You could do this with any reference photo you have. This only works with reference photos. So I'll show you how to do it with other things. When the shingles are completely, when you cannot see anything moving away from, then I'm going to, down or up across that, I'm going to put a little pin in my reference photo so it doesn't shift away. I've got this little piece of string. Let's see, is that inside? I'll zoom out a little bit. Sorry if this goes out of focus for just a second. Are we in focus? So I've got this little piece of string, and I'm going to push the pin in right where the edge of my eave connects with what I thought was my eye level. And I'm just going to now swing this string up. Oops, I was wrong. Okay. We can see I'm wrong because those should connect properly. So either my eye level is wrong. Ah, there we go. Or there, that's it. Now when I go to draw this, I'm going to be able to find my angles. I can just slip a piece of paper in here and find the angles of all of these little pieces of shingles, the tops of my windows, the tops of my building. All of it should connect up. Now I'm going to move this and do another one. And then I'm going to show you what I do when I'm plein air painting. Now I keep these, I've been keeping these in these sleeves so I don't mess up my reference photos. They're in these plastic sleeves. You see I've got paint all over it, so I might have messed it up. Now this one, this is an old mill, in an old mill stream. The millworks are all inside this building, and I'm down standing in the stream or on the edge of the stream looking up at the building. And so I'm going to try to find eye level And I know it's going to be really low, so I have to make sure this is straight. Sometimes when you're looking up at a building, your camera kind of tweaks, or when you're too close to a building, your camera distorts things. But I'm going and I'm looking at the edges of the siding. I'm looking at the tops of the windows where everything levels out, and I'm seeing it leveling out at the bottom of this. Oh, look, it's leveling out here on this side over here. It's leveling out on the bottom of the window. I'm going to take my string and put it across some siding, and it should, where the string and the angle of the siding connect, or I'll do it on the bottom of this window because it should be the same thing. Where it connects with my eye level, if I'm right, when I move the string, yes, see how the eaves connect? Now I would know when I'm drawing this that one of the eaves is going to be lower in the picture. I'm going to know what angle to draw the bottoms and tops of my windows at. The edge of this other building, the top of its roof. Now these roof lines are not part of this front lit plane. They're going to go off to a different vanishing point, and it's quite a ways away. So I'm not going to be able to do it on this piece of foam core. I get these at the dollar store. You can get a couple of them and put them side by side if you really want to have some fun. To me, this is a game. Finding eye level and looking at how, now with a simple twist of your hand, you can find all of the lines, the little lines in the windows, the little lines in the windows. If I want to do the other side, I would need to move this over, but I'm going to show you another method I have of finding perspective lines. It's a little more not maybe as accurate, but I do it when I'm outdoor plein air painting, and I'm going to move this. We're not outdoors, we're indoors, and I can't see anything outdoors right now because it's just a rainy, rainy, rainy day here in Portland. So I'm going to pretend like I am looking from the road down into this little area where there's an irrigation or drainage canal. There's some beautiful red, the blueberries turn red in the fall, bright red. There's corn stubble. I don't know if you can see it because I just put it up. Oh, there we go. A piece of plexiglass, not glass, plexi, and the cut edge. I mean, I cut the edge myself, so it wasn't done very well. I put a piece of tape on so I don't cut my hands. And then I have my eyes in front of what I'm looking at. And I just put I put my pencil in front of my glasses and just hold my head up straight and put that straight out and determine where I feel like my eye level is. And then I close one eye and I start finding the lines. And what I'm looking for is angles. I'm not going to put everything down. I'm just looking for angles. Because when I'm going to go to paint or draw this, I'll have an angle. So here's some paper. Now, if I'm going to recreate this, now I have my angles here. I can take whatever pencil or tool I'm using and just come right underneath. I'll actually do it with my dry erase pencil or dry erase marker. I'm just going to go right underneath this and basically just find those angles. Now I can finish my drawing And the angles are all here. I'm closing one eye again to get the angles in. Oh, and then I can just erase this off of here and use it again. But I have the basic angles of my landscape here. Even if I'm outside working and I don't have a reference photo, I can just hold this up right in front of what I'm seeing. I just have to make sure that I lock my elbow so it doesn't it doesn't do this, because it's going to change all the angles then. If I'm uncertain about certain things, like there's a corner angle there, corner angle, this turns. Look at what I can do. You can use this with your photocopied reference material too. I don't know what you'd do if it was just on a screen. You're going to have to just do a little something different. But isn't that fun? I mean, you can do this with houses and buildings too, and I'll show you in just a minute. And then we're going to get to our painting. So I'm going to set some stuff up for painting and set some stuff up for drawing. I'll be right back. I'm just going to move. I have a really little setup here. So I'm just going to move some things away so I can get my drawing and painting gear out, get this all set up. Now I've already set my palette up with 3 basic colors and white. And you can do the same if you'd like. Let's see, get this all here. Oh, I know, I should take this. Sorry about that. I need to take this away so everything fits on my little drawing board. There we go. There we go. Take it all away. Now, how often do I use the string trick? Only when things are really tricky. Only when things are really hard to figure out. I don't need that string all the time. There we go. Palette, I've put my basic palette colors on there. Here's my paintings, my 16 by 20 canvas that I have sectioned off into 4 pieces. And we'll use these. I won't use this one because I already put a mess on there. But I'm going to just do a couple of things with one of my strings and my pin. So I'll get that ready. Oops, I just broke the string. I'm going to get my little house ready. And if you have it, you can kind of come along with me. I thought I would just draw it onto one of these squares. I need a longer string now. I just broke that. There we go. And I'm going to just recreate this house small. So first of all, I'm going to put in my eye level. I'm going to draw it on there so I don't need that string anymore. This eye level will go away after a while, but I'm just going to draw it in. And I probably am going to draw it right across the page. And then I'm remembering on my, what I just did, is where's my vanishing point? Where did that string go that I just made? There we go. I want my side of my building right here. There's my ankle. Now, here's the top of the other side. And I'm just gonna guesstimate where, remember that X? This is how I'm gonna figure out the top is just a little bit shorter. Here's the top line of my, take a look, here we go. Maybe I didn't want this whole thing in there. This line is lower now. Put this on my vanishing point, and I've got the other edge. And I'm ready to go. I'm ready to build this little barn with paint. I don't want to do all of it in drawing because that will make me want to fill in all the blanks and get really, really tight. But I'm just marking where they go and marking where that perspective line would be. So I have it going back at the right angles. Oops, remember, Diana, you were taking that off. That's the one you want. And I'm removing this little, it's a chicken coop. It's a 6-sided chicken coop that I am just removing from there. But here is the drawing. I hope you can see that drawing well. I'll try to darken it in. So now we're going to paint. I was going to do a bunch of these, but I'd rather spend the time painting with you, wouldn't you? And we've got about 45 minutes left. So I'm going to put my painting stuff up. Oh, look, because I'm on an angle, I'm sliding. But what I recommend you do with this is start drawing in. Get a bunch of photos from your collection and start seeing what you can do. I have a whole bunch I was going to do with you today, but I don't want to take away, oh, look at that one. I don't want to take away our painting time doing all these drawings, but it would be really fun to try. So I'm going to set this aside for now. This is just a drawing, a Frederick's canvas pad, 16 by 20. And I can get lots and lots and lots of studies. And if I want to get rid of any of these, I can just take a little white paint or gesso and cover over it and paint again. So I can reuse these. They're real canvas. I can reuse them over and over. So now I'm going to get out my panel. There we go. Can we see this all? I will zoom in a little bit so we can, let's get that up. And I'll zoom in. And that way we'll be able to see everything that's going on better. There we go. Sorry, this is taking me a little bit of time to figure out. I don't know why I guess it's just the complexity of everything. There we go. So now we're working on this. Get out this, because this is what I'm talking about. When I'm not seeing much in perspective, just a little, it's all blurry. There's just a little tiny bit of perspective back here on this farm building. I'm probably going to cut it off because this is awfully long. This will be my focal point, or my secondary focal point. But what I love are these angles coming to here, and then you kind of drift over on this little bank of darker green. There's a little line of lighter orange. This is all late evening light, and I love that. So I am going to put in my first mark I'm going to put on this panel is just where the environment ends. That's not necessarily my eye level. If I can figure out where I dropped my string, that would be amazing. But if I didn't, I will work this out a different way. It just dropped to the floor and has vanished from sight. Okay, well, I'm going to just run my pen up. And now I'm going to run my pen up the other way. And it ends just above this end of the line. So I'm going to make that be my next line, is my eye level. My next line in here is going to be eye level. And I find it to be just above where the land ends up. And I can see real blurrily a couple little figures there, and that's where their eyes are leveling off too. So I'm going to take my pen or pencil with eye level. I'm going to follow that angle down. I'm going to end right about here, vanishing point. Now, am I using a ruler? No. Why? Because it's plants. Okay, the top of this is just about straight down. And then it starts to angle back a little bit because the plants are thinning out. This angle goes right to my vanishing point, the angle of the tops of the pinks. Isn't this beautiful dahlia field? It interconnects with the edge of my painting over here. Now this bit of the dahlias is what we were talking about before, where you can't see the rose anymore. So here's the top of the pinks, we'll go there. The tops of the oranges come like this, and then it's more of a triangle back in here. I'm seeing another little row of pinks and whites. They're ending here. Here's where that row of green ends. Here's the top of my form. There's a little building here. It's above eye level, slightly above eye level. So a little building. Side of the building is going to drop to eye, my vanishing point. There's a couple little weird door things there, and I'm shortening it because I don't want it too big in there. And what I really want big are these evening trees. And I think one of the things I'd really like to see, I'm going to get rid of those lines of perspective now. There's some overlap of flowers. I really want to see some light coming through those. Now, I also want to see, remember that 3D thing? Here's my vanishing point again. Those stems are in 3D. So I'm just telling myself where the stems are so I can get them in. These ones are right in the front of my vision. And I'm not seeing a lot of stems there. I'm seeing stems in here. So I'm not drawing them accurately. I'm just drawing where they'll come in and intersect. Now I'm not going to put this post in just yet. I don't think I like it. These posts might enter in. But let's get started. Painting. Are you ready? Can you see how I created this just by knowing some basics about perspective? I can come in and get that, work it out with just the angle of my pen. If this was a piece of canvas, which is not, I could just stick a pin right in there and swing my string around, which I may still do. Here's my string. I can't put a pin in this board, but I'll just hold my finger. String, string, string. See how everything pivots around the string. Oops, my little house is wrong, so we'll fix that in a minute. Goes up like that, my little shed thing. Fix that. It doesn't go down quite as much. There we go. And I'm ready to start. How about that? Okay. I'm going to take out a pretty big brush. If you don't have a brush this big, because I don't think I put it in my list, it's okay. You don't have to have a brush this big. I just want to cover a lot of turf. I'm going to make an underwash out of orange. And what I'm using are just 3 primaries. Whatever 3 primaries you have, I'm actually using Darylite Yellow, Quinacridone Magenta, and Ultramarine Blue. If you don't have these 3 primaries, don't worry. And white, my Uzi white. So I'm priming with this light orange. Or not priming, just putting an underwash. I'd like it to be about a mid-value. There's a lot of water on here, and water and acrylic paint aren't the best buddies. If you thin your paint down too much, it's going to break the binder. So I'm going to make sure to put lots of heavy paint on here afterwards. I'm just taking away areas of the lightest lights, areas that are going to be lighter than others. Areas where those last rays of sunlight are just popping in and hitting these beds of flowers. And so the next thing I'm going to do is use a little bit of a smaller brush. This is a 12 by 16 panel. So I'm just going to mix a little bit darker orange. And maybe pop a little bit of blue in there too. Sort of a browny orange, but this is going to represent my darker colors. My mid-value to darker colors. And what I'm doing is just trying to create a value scale right on here. Just a really simple one. You know, I'm not getting too crazy here with this. I'm just creating a really simple value scheme, light, medium, and dark. Because we're going to start mixing paint in a minute, and this is what's going to be fun. And I might, if you're following along with me with the colors from my suggested list, I might also add a bit of anthraquinine blue because it's going to make a really rich green. So I'm putting these dark shadows in. I could have even used that bigger brush, but it's okay. It's okay. Here we go. And the shadows are going back in perspective. I'm going to make a little dot where my vanishing point is so I remember where it is. In case things get crazy here, I'll have a memory of where my vanishing point belongs. Now we get to the color part of this. There's a lot of green on here, and the green really sets up these beautiful colors. So I want to make sure that I have the green that I really, really want. So I just stuck my finger in some yellow. Oh, nuts. Really a lot of yellow. Okay, I got it off. Okay. I'm just going to scrape some of the
Hey, Diana.
anthraquinine blue.
Just
off
a quick
the other
thing. One of the
palette.
reference
Yeah.
photos is kind of blocking the
Oh,
the
yeah,
canvas.
let's
Yeah.
get that out of there. Take the, yeah, thank you for reminding
Yeah,
me. I
totally.
never think to look. Let's make this bigger. There we go. I'll make it bigger too so we can really see it and see what I'm talking about if you guys haven't printed yours up.
Yeah, that's much
How's
better.
that? Is that good? Okay, great. Perfect. Get rid of my pencils. And now I'm gonna mix my green because green is really important in this image. I'm also gonna corral that white before it gets out of hand. There we go. It's crazy having your paint box on a slant. You never know what's going to happen. Okay, so here's ultramarine and derylite yellow, what that looks like. Here's the yellow green. I don't have a lot of yellow green, so I'm not going to worry too much about yellow green. I'm going to mix up the blue green. Here's what the blue green looks like. Now I'm going to put side by side with anthraquinine. It's also known as indanthrone. Both of those are the same color. I don't see it as too big of a deal, too big of a difference. It's just a little brighter. Ultramarine has a little bit of red in it, a little bit of purpliness, and it dulls the green just a little bit. The derylite yellow has a little bit of orange or red in it. That dulls the color a little bit, so the green won't be particularly bright, which is fine because these are greens in shadow. So now I'm going to create another shadow color, and then I'll really mix up a lot of paint. I've got a lot of surface area to cover. So I'm going to mix, I'm going to use my indanthrone blue. I'm going to mix a blue-violet between the red and the blue, and I'm going to mix a red-violet. And the reason I really chose this yellow is because a lot of those dahlias are this exact color. So I'm going to mix some oranges, starting with this yellow-orange, and just put a little tiny bit of this quinacridone magenta at a time to get the center of these orange flowers. Now, if I really want to punch up that orange, if I really feel like it needs to go brighter, I can add either a brighter red or I can add a little tiny drop of my accent color, cadmium orange, but I'm not going to work on that until I get these other colors mixed up. Now, everybody says what a hard time they have mixing enough color, and that is true. This paint is like gold. So I'm trying to take my paints that I mix from the edge of these globs, because I'm going to put these globs back in my paint box when I'm done. if I haven't wrecked them. So you can see me trying hard to just scrape from the edge of these. Here's a really deep blue. Now the sky color, I'm going to get something clean, a clean one of those thingies. That is a color shaper. The sky is the sun is going down and the last rays are hitting. So my sky color is going to be mostly this buttery yellow. And the shadows on my houses are quite, they're not dark. They're reflecting some light. So I'm creating a color that's going to give us this shadowy color in the background. Okay, I'm going to get started. This is still really wet, so I'm going to start on the lighter areas. Well, I can start in the darks too. Just blocking in my colors. And for that block in, I'm going to use a pretty big brush for the size of my canvas. If you're using a smaller canvas, don't use a size 12. Use a size 10 or a size 8. If you've got a bigger canvas, use a bigger brush. This blocking in doesn't have to be all these teeny little strokes. The blocking in can be big, beautiful, juicy brush strokes, just a little bit thinner than you might do on the end of the painting. I'm blocking in where the sky will go. And then I'm going to get I'm going to make a little bit of orange, greeny orange, for the edges of where the trees go, because they kind of are intersecting with the sky in an interesting way. I'm moving over to some darker color, and that seems weird, but I'm going to move back and forth a little bit. And I'm just blocking this in. It's interesting how every artist has a different way of doing this. So if you see another artist blocking in and it's completely different, don't worry. We all have developed ways that work for us. And you can steal this until you get your own way. If you have your own way, use it. But I'm just blocking in the main big blocks of color. And I'd really like to stick to my darks to begin with. I'm trying not to water down my paints. So I added purple to my green here at the base to create a darker underlayer. I'm going to layer a lighter green, richer green over top of that darker underlayer. The plants that are going, remember those pieces that are going up? I'm putting a dark underlayer behind those, getting smaller and smaller. Re-grab my vanishing point. There it is. Make sure that they still kind of hook up with my vanishing point. These are the stems. And then the ground, I'll get back on my brush like I'm supposed to. I'm just going to put some texture in here. This is a really smooth board, so I'm just popping in some texture. It'll get covered up. And I'm actually even overlaying a little bit of where the flowers are going to go, because they are going to lap over this bit. Here's that little piece of brighter dark green at the very edge of the field that helps move my eye over to the house. Now this is sopping wet, so I may need to let it dry a bit, but I'll try to get through all of it in one go. Now I can see in my reference photo up here, a lot of the flowers have, kind of fallen over. These are dahlias, and when they get big, they tip over. So I'm going to put those in as details later on. Right now I want to kind of stay a little bit true to my vanishing point, and then I will make all the stuff that doesn't stay true to it, because nature just does stuff. Nature doesn't always line up like architecture in straight, beautifully aligned little rows. Nature can get crazy. The wind can blow everything down. The guy planting it could have, been drinking the day he was running his tractor and made things go off. Who knows? But I want to, as best I can, stay true to my vanishing point here, because it's really going to help with the outcome. Okay, now I'm going to block in the foreground. There's a couple of big flowers, and I'm just going to figure out where I'd like those to be. They don't have to be exactly where they are in the reference photo. But I'm going to leave some room, and the green here is a little bit brighter. Some of these leaves are catching a little bit of light, so I'm going to try to represent that just a little bit. Leave some holes. And as we go back in space, the flowers are getting smaller and they're appearing to get clumped more together. So you won't see a lot of individual flowers the further back we get, because of overlap. They're getting clumped together. Okay, I'm ready for a smaller brush. That big lay-in is done, and we can really already feel how the field of dahlias is going back in space. So I think I'm going to go to a workhorse paintbrush of mine, a number 6. Might be a little small, but I really like the way this 6 feels in my hand, so I'm going for it. I'm going to create a really light, bright, thicker paint will stick to wetter paint. So I'm going to get a light, bright, thicker, orangey color, and then a little bit of a darker. It seems that like the light is coming from here and going this way. So the shadows on these dahlias, although they're not dull, are a little darker. And they're over on this side. The lit side of the dahlias and those really light, bright ones are here and on this side. So many things to pay attention to. Oh my goodness. The light and the shadow and the color of the light, which is golden in the afternoon, and the perspective, which hopefully once we get those lines in is pretty much a done deal, but I kept my vanishing point open so in case I lost it, I'd be able to find it again. Now I'm not painting a flower just yet. I'm just putting in movements of shadow and light, light and dark. If I start thinking flowers, I'm going to get pretty sweet, too fast. I'm going to mix a pink, which is just my quinacridone magenta, and that is, I'm going to put it over here with my light tints. Put a little bit of yellow in it because yellow light is hitting those pinks. Just a little bit of the yellow, the color of yellow light. And I'm not worried about the green smearing in because I'm going to come in and block things out in just a minute. I just want where this row of pinks is. I'm still blocking in. I'm blocking in until all of my underwash is covered. Then I'm not blocking in anymore. There's a little gap, which I like because that's nature. And it goes back. And the shadowed side of these dahlias again is darker. I'm keeping them light bright. And now there's that triangular shape, sort of, a brilliant orange. So I've already mixed up some. And I may come back in, like I said, with my cadmium orange at the end and really zap that up with bright color. But I might not need to. It all depends. When it comes to brightness, it all depends upon how dull a color you put next to it. If you put a bright next to a dull, the bright is going to look brighter. So if I have created these greens a little bit dull, these bright oranges, and throw a little blue in there, because if I throw some of the opposite on the color wheel next to them, they're also going to look bright. So if it's bluer, duller, that's why putting purple in the green was helpful. And you know me, if you've seen any of my demos before, I like to scratch to create texture. Those scratches won't stay looking like that forever, but it creates something interesting going on both in the background, in with the stems, in with the foliage. So I'm just doing that, and I will paint over that in a minute, and just a bare little remnant of that scratch will show through. When I'm doing demos in person, I hear people go, when I do that, because it's shocking to have put something in and then scratch it all up. This is really, I see a bunch of stems because I'm through the plant here instead of gazing over the top of the plant. And I see just a whole bunch up through here in a lighter color and also in the darker color. How neat is it to have all my greens going from light green to dark green right here, and then to this dark purpley green. It's really fun to have all these colors right at hand. Of this purpley green, just a little bit back in here, because purple's the opposite on the color wheel of yellow, and it's going to make those yellows really pop if there's a little bit of purple embedded in the green. Okay, more color, and the little house, and the perspective on the little house. Okay, I better go. I've only got a few minutes left. So when it comes to perspective, it's such a good tool to have in your hand. It's such a good, helpful tool. Do you need it to paint? No, just get your paints out and start painting. Is it fun to play with? Yes, it's a blast. And you don't need to worry about doing it right at first. Just review. Some of the books on perspective get really technical really fast, which if you're a good technical person, that's fine. Otherwise, just use the string trick for a long time until you come up against something that you really can't figure out. And then hopefully by then I will have the course, the Acrylic University course all put together. But if that is not the case, you can do this. You can experiment. You can play. I got my start learning perspective, like I said, when I was trying to avoid doing math in my math class. Oh, those of you who are teachers are just rolling your eyes, I know. But it was what it was. And but I just with a ruler, a little hidden ruler in my peachy and a pencil, I made all kinds of crazy imaginary worlds of street scenes and fences and houses and interiors and all kinds of stuff, just horsing around. And of course, all those pictures were thrown out. I didn't keep them. They were just me playing with ideas. And I think that it's a great idea to consider it if you have never experienced it or had any experience with doing anything in perspective. Just get out some old paintings that you feel weren't done and get the old string test out and see if you can find where your eye level was. Here, my eye level's way up here. I'm standing in the garden looking out across these dahlias and looking down on them, but looking across at that building. So I'm still laying in because I still have big patches of unpainted territory. The White House is in shadow, and the shadow is darker than the sky. Oops, I really messed up on that, but I'm going to come back with the green and negative shape paint. And it's a little bit bright because it's getting a lot of reflected light in there. So I'm just taking some of the colors of the this is higher, and the house will go higher. This building, because I feel like they would be reflecting, the light would be bouncing. Now, but this side of the building is in deeper shadow. And there's a little bit of greenishness in that shadow. Again, probably because the light is hitting off of trees and bouncing up into the shadowed part of that building. Now I'm looking at the face of this building, so of this triangular shape, so I don't need to get fancy with it. I just need to find the angles of the roof line if that is important to me in here, and not make it look too much like a silly face. Oops. Now, because the house is sort of not part of the main idea, it's a sub-idea, I'm keeping it, as in the photograph, the house is very out of focus. I'm keeping it a little bit out of focus too. I want the flowers to be the main thing. So you see, when I change colors, I'm just rinsing my brush and wiping it. Now is the time to start thinking about flowers. Now is the time for me to start thinking about how the shapes are moving in shadow and light, which things are, where the light is hitting. I'm thinking about flowers in the most abstract terms because I want to keep this painting loose and light. But I am thinking about negative shapes, where they come in. I'm going to think about the shapes of stems and the shapes of some oddball little guys like sticking their little heads way out, defying that whole thing of perspective, saying, I'm not following your rules. But I still want to keep the basic idea running through this so that I still keep my feel of 3D. It's just a hint of some kind of flower back there on that edge. A little more paint on that. Now, I'm going to start applying some details. Are there any questions about what I'm doing as I go, Peter? Because this is the time, we've just got a few minutes left, and now's the time for people to ask some questions. And I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, absolutely. I wrote down a couple from like throughout the day. And anybody, if I miss yours, please feel free to shout out your question and we can get it answered. So, Marilyn Batchelor asks, do your values principles apply to landscapes in the same way as they do to still lifes?
Yes, that is a really good question. And interior light and exterior light can be quite different. But still, those things that are in shade and shadow are going to have to fit into our value scale. And so we only have 9 or 10 values to work with on our value scale. I'm going to see if I can find one. This one's all messed up. It's part of a value scale I gave to some students, but my shadows are going to fall in these darks. Most of my bright colors are going to fall in these mid values, and everything struck by light is probably going to fall into one of these values. Now, the exception would be the reflected light on the house. But usually we have to break down light because we only have so many values to use. When in nature has thousands of values, but we have to carefully break it down. So that was an excellent question. And the other thing we have to do is squint, because sometimes out in nature the light is so bright and bouncing and reflecting everywhere that you'll get a lot of reflected light lighting up shadows that you wouldn't think should be lit up. But we still have to create context and contrast with our values. And not everybody would paint the values this dark. I'm doing it because it's late afternoon. and just a sweep of light is hitting the tops of things. So I'd like to find the way that happens. Now, in a normal painting, I'm going to take a lot more time than 45 minutes, but we can see the process. I work from big shapes, and now I'm working down to my smaller shapes. Every time I think I'm lost, I kind of get my brush out and I hook my brush up to my vanishing point just to make sure I'm staying on track with that vanishing point. The paint is sopping wet, so I'm having to mix thicker and thicker globs of paint. You know, if this were in my studio, I might wait and let things set up a bit and dry so I get nicer, crisper edges on things. But here, if I put thicker paint down over the wet paint, I'm still going to get coverage. It means that I can't put any water in the paint. If I put water in this paint, it will not cover the wet paint underneath. It'll just all pick up. It'll lift. So I'm working hard at keeping the paint thick and water-free so that it doesn't lift. But we can see even though I'm throwing some guys out, you know, off the edge, I'm trying to keep the main body of everything still functioning with this basic vanishing point. I may need to pull out some more red. What time do we have there, Peter? Are we good?
We have a few minutes, but we can go a little bit over.
I'm not. Oh. Great. If people are wanting me to, I'm happy to, because I'm really loving how this painting is coming out, and it's bringing back that sense for me of
absolutely
summer.
Maybe we could go for like 50 more minutes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah,
so
that sounds perfect, because then we could really, you know, really get the sense of light and shade and shape here. So
no
yes,
worries.
what were you going to say? I'm sorry.
So someone asks, an artist I know used a projector to paint. What are your thoughts about this?
I think that it doesn't matter. If you want to project, that's fine. I think that artists throughout the ages used tools. I know Vermeer used a photographic lens type tool. And, you know, it's not, I don't really think there's cheating. Is the painting beautiful at the end? Did you express the thing you were wanting to express?
Yeah.
Knowing how to draw and being able to draw is a really, really important skill. And often when you project, the photograph have you ever noticed that sometimes your photographs are wonky? Because if you zoom in from far away, or if you are too close to a subject, your photographs are going to look a little weird. And if you project that, it will project the weirdness onto your canvas, where if you get, you know, if you do the drawing, you can figure out where it's gone wrong and you can fix it. But that saying, I think you need to do whatever you need to do to make your painting great. If you're terrible at drawing right now, but you intend to get better, go ahead, project. You know, who cares? unless you're projecting someone else's photograph and you're doing it photorealistic and then you put it in a show, that's stealing. Don't steal. But if you just don't know how to draw and you really want to paint, do whatever you need to do to get there. And then learn to draw. I had a hard time with drawing because it turns out I just hated the feel of the sound of a pencil going on a scratchy paper. And when I figured that out, I just got smoother drawing nibs on pens and smoother paper, and I didn't have that squeaky sound going on all the time. And then I could learn to draw. But it was just it wasn't a thing where I didn't want to learn to draw. There was just something getting in my way, and it happened to be that feeling on my hand. So, don't steal, but don't worry that projecting is cheating. That's all I have to say.
And then somebody asks, so you had a bunch of guidelines like on your pictures and your slides and stuff, and people are asking what program you were using for those lines.
Oh, that is called, that's a Mac program, and it's just Keynote. It's a slideshow program, and it has all kinds of animation functionality that you can use. And if you're looking for something else that does that, I have a Mac, so I'm not sure what other computer programs do, since it's been so long since I've used them. But there's got to be something like that with the same kind of functionality. You just put a slide, you open the program, put a slide in, and then there's options for adding a shape, animating the shape, all that kind of stuff. I can give a tutorial on it sometime, but it's just called Keynote.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect. So then we had another couple question here. Zerka Hayes says, I know you like to use a board to paint on. Do you use D-rings to hang just like a canvas?
Yes. Let me flip this. I won't flip it over all the way because I'll smash my painting. But it has, this one is, it's got this cradled edge, and the D-rings go right in this edge here. And what I like about this too is this is a standard size. It just pops right into a frame if you want to frame it. But the other thing I do with these is if I haven't sold it and it's got to go in storage, I buy some clear bags, and I just I title the painting on the back. I write the title and the date, and then I slip it into, I varnish it and let it dry, slip it into a clear bag. It's ready to be sold. And I also write the name of it on the side. So when it goes into storage, I can find it easily. And it's protected from being scratched, because acrylic paintings can scratch. And it's ready to go, and it's protected from dust and from, I one time had a mouse get into my studio years ago, a commercial studio I rented, and it did little mousy things on my paintings, which was terrible. So it protects them from that too, if there's any of that nonsense going on. But these panels are great because you can, they're a little bit heavy. I don't buy them for bigger paintings because they'd weigh too much. But they're really strong, and they ship well, and they store well, and they frame well. So I like them. And with a canvas, the canvas can be a little fragile. And for small paintings like this, I find that the canvas texture can get in my way. It gets in the way of the texture I want in the painting. So that is one of the other reasons I like these smooth wood panels, is that the texture doesn't get in the way of anything. I can make my own texture. I'm still finding areas that I need to fill in, and those little, and still keeping in mind the angle of the light, big to small. Things in the foreground are going to be bigger than things back here. So these little, whatever those are, buds. There we go, buds. I'm starting to lose my ability to speak here. Those little buds are bigger in the foreground than in the back. This color I picked, quinacridone magenta, and I think all the quinacridone colors, is very transparent. So it's kind of hard to get it to cover. So I had to add a little white to it, and then I can come back and add, get it redder. I didn't like that line I just made. I'm starting to need to really focus because I'm getting to smaller and smaller detail. And one of the things about getting to that detail is you really have to pay attention. You can't just guess and estimate away. You're paying close attention to negative shape, to the detail of things too. Like every once in a while, I will find a really important shape that needs to go in to define what I'm doing. And I'm going to add those.
Nancy, she says, just got home and online and can't wait to view this. When will it be available to view in full? Thank you. By the end of the day, I'm going to download it and then upload it to the site as soon as I can. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time. But check within the next few hours or so, and we'll definitely try and get that up for you as soon as possible. And we have a couple more questions, but I just want to say, Dianna, there have been a lot of encouraging comments, and people are absolutely loving your demo.
Oh, I'm so happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dianna. Great demo, and I've learned so much about perspective and use of thick paint. This is a fabulous tutorial and a great demo. Thank you, Dianna.
You're welcome.
And more. And a lot of people have said that they would really enjoy a perspective course, so that's something we should look at for sure in the future.
Yeah, let's look at that for next year sometime. I also want to encourage everybody to look into perhaps the new minis. I did 52 minis that just went on sale. And there is a course for you that requires nothing of you but just to click on, which is Still Life, that you guys just edited and put in there, that I worked on all summer. And you guys, or not all summer, all July, I should say. I had done it in the winter, and then Jed came by, God bless him, I love him so much, with new camera equipment. And the new camera equipment made everything so much better. I had to refilm everything. So then I spent all July redoing the Still Life course, and I think it's gorgeous. You did such a beautiful job, Peter, of editing it. It just looks so much more than I ever could have hoped for with that course. So I was tickled when I went through all of it and went, that's me? I can't even believe that.
Yeah, guys. Dianna, for members, just released the her Still Life course, which is incredible. You all have access to that. And then, her mini challenge, she painted 52 mini paintings, made painting lessons out of them. And if you sign up for the mini challenge before January 1st, you're going to get one mini painting lesson from Dianna every single week for an entire year. And
a year. You get to paint with me for a year. I said, a year. You get to paint with me for a year. It's so great.
It's pretty cool. And they're all 30 minutes or less and done on a 6x6 canvas. So they're super approachable and you can learn from them really easily. So I pinned the link for that. So if any of you want to try Dianna's miniature challenge, that's available for you. And it's on sale until November 29th. And you can also find Jed's miniature challenge if you haven't taken that yet either. So, lots of good stuff. Lots of good stuff happening.
Lots of good stuff. Lots of good stuff happening. And next month, I will be teaching another course, and it's Winter
I'm so
Wonderland is the title of the course. And I think this month, I just thought Fields and Farms went so well with this idea of perspective. And Winter Wonderland is all going to be about creating colors in light values, colors in white, finding the colors of snow, because snow is so much more than just white. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a lot of color, and I know people love it when we teach color. So So Winter Wonderland, I can't wait. I have so many great reference photos that several years ago I needed to go to Maine where my daughter lives. She broke her ankle and I needed to be a mom to my adult daughter for a while and help her. And it was in the middle of winter and we had an ice storm and I couldn't drive anywhere. So I went and walked and took tons and tons of beautiful reference photos for this. Old homes in Maine that are just gorgeous, perfectly beautiful, picture perfect in the snow. Absolutely something wonderful to have a painting of if you want to paint along with me for the holiday season, because they just look like picture postcards. They're so beautiful. So I'm really excited about that. I'm going to be finishing up. I still have a couple pieces of bare canvas underneath here, like right there. I could be finishing up on this for hours, but I'm really thinking that if I want to keep it loose and light, I'm going to keep maybe some of this stuff a little more abstract. And if I decide to finish up, if I decide to go further, not finish up, but just take it further, what I'll do is I'll do a little video of myself taking it further. Sometimes I like the privacy of not having people see me ruin a nice painting. But I will, if I don't ruin it, I will send it to you, Peter, and we can make it available.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I
people
could just add it to the same one with or the same page with your demo on it when it's uploaded. Gene Hudson says, taken many courses, but nothing compares to this. Learning volumes, and we'll definitely need to review this a bit at a time to digest it slowly and put all this knowledge to canvas.
Definitely review it. I put so much content in that slideshow, and it's really hard to take in all at once. And I was kind of aware of that. And I was hoping that it would just be a way to keep engaging with the video for a while until people really kind of, found the swing, and play with it until, don't put it in your paintings till you feel like you've got a handle on it. Just save it as a game you play. That's what I play this game a lot and it's fun. I think I'm padding this to death. I'm starting to lose. Look at all the same shape and size. Look at what I just did. I'm going to cover those up. The same shape, the same size, and out of the value range, and I wasn't looking. That's what happens when you stop looking. So get rid of those guys. There we go. Better, huh? That's so much better. Not having those things just come completely out of character with the rest of the painting. I don't feel like I need to reach into my cadmium orange. I feel like the darker and duller colors I used, and maybe right back here I will, but the darker, duller colors I used really help to make these look brighter. I'll just put a little bit more blue in that color and a little more blue in this color. And that helps brighten that up.
Yeah. So
Go
just
for it.
trying to squeeze as many questions as we can here because we got about a minute left.
Yep.
Or not. This one's not a question, but Rachel says, having perspective described from a landscape art point of view is so much better than from a graphic art point of view. I am glad I watched today. Thank you for your time and effort, Dianna.
Oh, you are so welcome. We are visual people, and it is so important for us to understand that we can trust our eyes about what we're seeing. And it's taking it out of the world of graph paper and protractors or whatever, and putting it in the world of the artist's hands, just whatever tools we have at hand to turn this perspective thing we're seeing. I mean, we see it every day. So to turn it into something real for us, I think is so important. And I'm sad that so many artists were taught in a way that was not
in accordance to the way they see, because we're visual people, and then they got turned off to the topic entirely, and then won't use it because they're turned off, and that is a shame because it's such a wonderful tool to have, and it's worth the time we invest in it if you want to make things have depth and look 3D. Okay, I'm going to stop patting this because I am making it worse. There comes a point where you think, oh, if I just put one more drop, see, I'm doing it again. One more bit, then it'll be better. And then it makes it worse. And then one more bit, and then it makes it worse. So when you hit to the point where everything is worse, stop, go get lunch or something, and then come back to it later. I'm going to save this palette, and I will reconnect with this image and review. So anyway, I'm going to come back over to my control panel and say goodbye. Thanks everyone for being such good sports with this. I know there was a lot of material, and I didn't cover even, I sort of just got the very basics. There's so much more to learn on this topic, and I'm just so happy to share this amount with you. Play, have fun, be excited, let your creativity explode. Sometimes when you have a framework to put your creativity in, it makes it so much easier to express. And sometimes you just don't even care about that stuff. So just, I was looking at some of Vincent van Gogh's, and there's so many of his where he just didn't pay attention to perspective at all. And, he's a master. So just do, paint from what you feel is important, add little tools as you need them. And know we love you, we support you, we believe in you. Acrylic University is here for you so that you can be a happier, more fulfilled, and more accomplished painter. We're all on the same page. The whole team is here for you.
Yeah.
So know that. And that if I could be there with you, person, and encourage you in person, I will, but I'm here, so have a helping, and we'll see you hopefully in the minis, definitely next month in December with this.
Yeah.
And we'll see
Bye
you
everybody,
again
have a good
soon.
weekend,
Thanks,
and
everyone.
happy painting.
Bye-bye.